You're listening to Mallrats, the ultimate Star Wars podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Mallrats. This is episode 3's discussion on the book of Boba Fett, as well as, I guess, anything Star Wars as our conversation can go. I'm Bob.
I'm Nolan.
And we are doing this remotely for the first time, so we're going to play around and see how this works out. I guess right off the bat, how are your feelings with Book of Boba Fett overall through 3 episodes?
I think the first 2 episodes seemed like they were good. It's a new series. You can't really complain too much about that. It seemed a bit clunky off the get-go, just trying to fit into the new step-by-step back and forth between timelines. But by now, it's sort of gotten into its groove and really defined what the show itself is.
I would agree. They have to, yes, we already know the main character and we know the premise of Jedi and all of that. But other than that, all of these other people the exposition has to be established before we can get excited about it. Mandalorian, had a similar kind of stilted start. We didn't know anything about him. And with each of the little stories, they were almost self-contained. Like the Prison Break episode was just one-off adventure, which we didn't realize then. But Bill Burr was going to show up later. But the second season was so enjoyable for me. Like every episode was just getting better and better. It was kind of like, to me, the end of Breaking Bad. There wasn't a bad episode. It just kept getting better and better and better. And it had the Luke payoff at the end, much like the Breaking Bad Walter White ending. So with this, while we have some background information, locations and some characters, they really have to, we don't know a lot, and those Tusken scenes, I think, were really vital and important. So I'm curious now that seems, and we'll get to it here in a bit, that kind of sense, it appears to be a little resolved, which it answered a lot of questions. So now I'm just really curious what's going to happen, especially with the way that this one ended.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about episode 3, The Streets of Mos Eisley. The file size on Disney Plus said it was 38 minutes, but there's like a minute 40 of recap and introductions and then credits at the end. So it's probably about 34, 35-ish minutes overall. So
I'd actually like to correct you. It's titled.
Wait, hold on. Is this what? Are we going to start this?
Yes. Yeah. You're wrong.
So it's okay for me to correct you in the future.
Okay. I'm never wrong.
Never wrong.
I'm never wrong. It's always right in some way.
If only we were recording this for posterity.
Yeah. Anyways,
okay, correct me.
It's actually titled The Streets of Mos Espa, but whatever.
Oh!
Unimportant.
No, that's a really... I even typed Eisley in my notes.
Oh,
my God.
That's a big one.
Okay, well, why don't you just do the intro?
No, you got it.
No, I mean, that's a big...
I'll take the back seat. I want to correct you some more.
One. My bad. The Streets of Mos Espa. Oh, my goodness. It originally aired, the time we're recording this yesterday on the 12th of January 22, directed by Robert Rodriguez, which we don't know who's directing them until, I think it's the first credit, isn't it? At the end of each episode. But as we'll talk in a little bit, I kind of guessed that it was going to be him based on an actor showing up. As I like a lot of Rodriguez's stuff, and this actor shows up a lot. So it's kind of like, Tarantino kind of has his crew, or Kevin Smith has his crew. And Jon Favreau obviously wrote, I guess we can safely say he's going to write all of these, being the man that he is. So scene 1, the exterior of Boba's palace, now that it's not Jabba's anymore. We see the spider with the ball of liquid underneath it. And I'm not sure have we talked about this?
Yes, every single episode.
Okay. They're called Bomar monks, and his palace used to be, Jabba's palace used to be a monastery. And so I looked up on Wikipedia because I had read, there was a novelization of short stories called Tales from Jabba's Palace. So all those characters you see in Jedi, they all have their individual little stories around the time of Luke showing up and Han. It explains why certain characters aren't on the barge, things like that. It's really interesting. Um, but Wikipedia says that those Bomar monks, they isolated themselves from all physical sensation to enhance the power of their minds. So to that aim, the enlightened monks had their brains transplanted into nutrient-filled jars. So whenever they wanted to move, those spider walker little things. So those are actually the consciousness brains of monks. And so I don't think I had called them Bomar monks, but I had a little bit more research, so I
Yeah.
wanted to get that on there. But I'm glad we saw it because that was a clip from the trailer, and we pretty much have seen everything so far um, from the trailer. Because in the first two episodes was most of it,
Yeah.
and then he has the big Godfather scene at the table, which
I
I'm
expect to
betting
be next episode.
it. If it's not, I have no idea what they're doing in the present. But yeah, that'll be next episode. So, anyways, that's the exterior Boba, and then we go inside an 8D8, yeah, the droid, the torture droid from the Gonk power droid from Jedi. He's there looking at the hollow map. And what were your thoughts or impressions of that scene?
I think it's very Hunger Games like to split up the map of an entire city into just these three parts. The Clatuinians have
Yep.
one part,
Mm-hmm.
the Aqualish have another, and then the other guys have another one. The
Transition.
Transitions, yes, but it's I don't know. It's
Well, you got to have
yeah,
power.
yeah,
You got to
yeah.
figure it out. And 8D8 said, and I loved how he says, well, after the sail barge disaster. So yeah, from his perspective, it was a disaster, right? It was blown up, and then it threw things into chaos. He said that there was a power vacuum, and when Bib Fortuna took over, the Twi'lek servant, the everything was split, and it was a great visual representation of the crater of Mos Espa, as well as the up above. They call it the upper sprawls. Up on the I guess sea level maybe. And the Trandoshans got to control the city center. So there's kind of that big, well, right in the center, there's like a big, it almost looks like one of the Jedi Tower spires on Coruscant. There was just like a large monument or tower. So the Trandoshans are like the lizards. One of the original bounty hunters, Bosk, is the most famous Trandoshan. And if you saw Clone Wars, there was a lot of those sprinkled throughout. But the city center is important. We see a lot of them every time Boba walks down the street. Is that Main Street? I mean, it seems to be, since the mayor's right there, the sanctuary seems to be there.
Good business for Garza though, right on Main Street.
Garza's Flip, yeah, you're right. But then you look from above at the hologram, like, well, there's so many different streets, but this seems to be the one that they built on the back lot for their exteriors. But anyways, so the Aqualish are humanoid, but yet not humanoid in stature, bipedal, but they look like they call them walrus face, the generic, just like the Ithorians or the Hammerheads, that type of thing. And the most famous Aqualish was in episode 4. He's the one whose arm gets cut off by Obi-Wan in the cantina. Ponda Baba. He's the one with the Dr. Evazin. So a very famous one for those who haven't pictured it. But the Clatuinians are kind of for lack of a better term, kind of the dog-faced ones. And the main live action that we've seen is on Jabba's sail barge, as kind of the security force. So a lot of them die. But so anyways, those are the three families. I think 8D8 calls them. And so Bib would allow them to work. He allowed them to, because he didn't have the power. And so he said that, Bib was fine relying on these uneasy alliances. And so I imagine there was some fighting back and forth amongst each other, but the mayor didn't care because he was getting his cut, and he got wealthy. So we just in a few minutes, we got a lot of information and a lot of exposition about what Tatooine was like, especially underneath Bib's reign, which is important because Boba's like, well, what's happening now? and he said, "Well, they're waiting to see how strong you are," and so that's one of the things Boba has to react to, you know. Uh, so that's the big exposition. Then we get Lortha Peel, who is a watermonger from the workers district, and so this, in essence, is a middleman, the man who gives money to the moisture evaporator farms, kind of like Luke's Lars homestead, and he gets it, and then he marks up the price. He sets a price, and we see later that he's he's a greedy sort. But this guy here, did you recognize him? Because I know you know that I did.
Yeah, you
But the
know that I
actor.
know that you did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I did. You
Well,
know,
yeah. Once we talked
you know
about the
that I
things
know.
he's in, but here's and yeah, we're going to be positives, but I want to be honest. I mean, there were some kind of distracting things in this episode for me that I didn't really care for. I love this guy. The actor is Stephen Root, famous from Office Space as being Milton. You know, my stapler. Dodgeball. You know, he was the guy in the goggles who has to get really angry. But he's been in so many things: The Man in the High Castle, News Radio, a TV show, tons of stuff. And for him to walk out as a human, I was distracted and pulled out by it. I don't know if that was for you because some of the famous people tend to be just their voices or maybe underneath prosthetics. Did you have a opinion about that at all?
Not really. I just kind of rolled with it because we've seen so many, humans on Tatooine and humans everywhere. I guess it is cheaper not to just to skip over prosthetics, but it didn't really pull me out. It just was a little, laughs and giggles, and then
Yeah,
moves on
little chuckles.
right
It's
after
just
that.
that I'm such a fan of his, and he's always so good and stuff. I can recognize his voice, whether it's a Coen Brothers movie or whatever. And it's almost like if Brad Pitt had walked out and Brad Pitt was there talking, it would have been as distracting because I'm like, oh, well, that's the dude from all the movies, like Stephen Root was. Um, so he's there. Why was he? He had a proposition or a petition. Can you talk a little bit about that?
He basically just wants to get these like cyberpunk kids kicked out of his place because they keep stealing his water. I They say later, once they confront them, a month's wage of work for a week's worth of water, which I think this guy is really greedy. Uh, yes.
Yeah, supply. It's supply and demand, right? It's supply and demand, and on Tatooine you need it. And so these people aren't stealing money or credits; they're stealing water for survival. And that's an interesting thing we can talk about in a little bit. But the gang, half man, half machine, as they were talking about, and according to Lortha Peel, the actual watermonger's name, he says they did it to make themselves more deadly. And so he's really making them out to be big time criminals and a huge crime problem. And if Boba can take care of this problem, he's willing to pay twice the tribute for
Yeah.
protection
It just
costs.
seems kind of he's bumping them up because they're really just like a bunch of harmless teenagers with a couple magnetic eyeballs and
And they're costing him money.
yeah, and like the main little guy or the girl, sorry, she doesn't really have anything special. She just is kind of struggling.
Yeah. You mean like cybernetics and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing too much there. When they had the street chase later, you got to see a few of the I guess we'd call them thugs, even though they don't seem to be. But they use some sort of um, abilities to disable the car. But Jabba, oh Lord, Boba decides they go out, and I love this shot. They go out to the street at night, and I love the shot because you saw Mos Espa lit up at night with all the lights. It looked like a little city, nothing like Coruscant, but just like if you were to fly in an airplane over a city and you would see all the lights. And that was just cool. It's something we hadn't seen before. And yeah, life is still going to happen at night. And I just really dug that. I don't know why. That was just really pretty.
We haven't really gotten
Um,
any exterior nighttime shots besides maybe seeing it through the windows and
yeah, and people are around fires, right?
yeah, a city we've never really seen gone into detail besides in quick shots in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, yeah. And Mos Espa, I mean, this is much different of a viewpoint of Mos Espa than from Phantom Menace was. It was mainly just Watto and and their slave quarters, and which looked very much like it could have been Mos Eisley, which was the main other live action location with the cantina from the movies. And so you see that this, and especially with the three crime families, they have commerce. They have a legion. It's a business. It's just there's a life going on. There's a major city,
Yes.
major population. It's not all people living like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. It's not all just moisture farmers. There's other industries, and I find that interesting as, again, providing us more exposition so that we care when we have that rising action and climactic moment. So he meets, he meets up with the young thugs in the street. They do have names, so I've looked them up. The girl's name is Drash, like Thrash, but Drash. She's a young actress on a TV show called Yellow Jackets right now, which is pretty popular. Her name is Sophie Thatcher. I don't know her for anything. And then the one-eyed guy, his name is Scad.
Scad.
So Drash and Scad. Those are the only two that I looked up. But Boba, in essence, he tells them, you guys stole this, and if you need money, get to work. And this isn't the work district, right? And she goes, look around. There's no work to be had. And instead of getting forceful with them, he's very empathetic, compassionate.
I think it's very different from what we've seen of bounty hunters, just ruthlessness, but he hears their side of the story compared to the greedy water hoarder guy. And I don't know, you get to see what like the poverty is in Mos Espa, and it's just really a side of, I guess, Star Wars as a whole we've never really seen besides like Anakin and slavery.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really important to establish that that there's always two sides to the story, and he's willing to listen to both. So you listen to, Lord Peel, and then he goes out and he hears the other side, and he sees it, and he hears them. There's no place for work. They're desperate. And he says at one point later, or earlier rather, I grew up on a water world, and we find out that Tatooine used to be covered in water. And so to see them do what they do, and they're willing to work. In fact, he goes, well, if there are no jobs, you come work for me. And they ultimately accept. And I thought that's really intriguing, and that pays off for him later. Right after he does that, Lortha comes out and he has a problem. What's his problem?
He's giving these guys who stole money from him a job. He's giving them an opportunity that they took from the guy. He's just, this is not right.
Why are
Pay
you
me.
rewarding these kids? They stole from me. They stole water, which is money, so took money out of his pocket. And he priced it at, they owed me 1,300 credits. Now, as the middleman, he buys it low, he sells it high. And in his mind, he's trying to turn obviously a profit. So he's like, well, that water, it's not necessarily worth 1,300, but if that's what he was going to market it at, yeah, it's 1,300 credits. And then Boba pays him 500 out of his pocket to settle the debt. And and his threat of if you don't like it, you can take off. You can go to Mos Eisley.
Go to Mos Eisley.
Which the only thing we know about Mos Eisley is the cantina stuff and Obi-Wan's line the first time we see it from a distance. You'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Nobody said that about, it might be true about Mos Espa, but nobody has said that about Mos Espa. And so I find this really interesting. The guy just shut up then, and he took his 500, considered it, and left. Now, whether he shows up again or not, I don't know.
Probably
a guy
not.
Of his stature to show up for 2 episodes, but I don't think he has as much skin in the game as Chrysanthemum or something like that. In a little bit. Good. So, Boba, he's getting his a crew together. People who for employment, and trying to put money in the community, I guess, and in a way can help get rid of violence, get rid of theft and crime. So the next scene, we jump to the exterior, getting ready for a flashback, the Bacta tank. And this is a really emotional scene coming up. He's again dreaming of Camino
Wait,
as a
but
kid.
before he went into the back to tank, I can't remember if it's now or like at the end of the episode where he's going like in the car chase with the major domo. Is that right now?
No, that's later. Yeah,
And the time
yeah.
frames on this stuff is so weird.
Well, it's because of the flashback. We still have to have the a lot of that other stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. But no, this was and then Boba's riding his bantha. He's leaving the Tatooine, the Tuscan camp, and slowly making his way to Mos Eisley, where he is there to talk to the Pikes. Okay, so can you remind us why he's communicating with the Pikes from last episode?
Second episode, we saw that the Pikes were leading this death train that went through the Dune Sea, killing all these Tuscans, and they lied about not having spies, gave water to all the Tuscans, and just made him walk to Anchorhead, and so now he's going to confront their big bad honcho of a boss. Basically, where the syndicate operates out of either Anchorhead or Mos Eisley, wherever he pulled up to.
This one's Mos Eisley.
Okay.
So that's where, because he gets into town, he goes, where's the Pikes, or who's in charge here. One of the things I liked before he talked to that, it was really no dialogue. He rode by. Anyway, there were a bunch of Empire helmets on spikes, which that was a great callback to one Mando when he was in Mos Eisley. That was one of the first teaser still shots advertising the Mandalorian first season, was that, because it screams that the Empire is not wanted here, the Empire has no influence here anymore, and that's really where everything ran amok. We hear about that from the Cobb Vanth episode in Mando, that one we keep referencing because that was the Tuscans and Boba. But when he said that the Death Star blew up, they didn't get peace. All of the mining gangs and different stuff, remember, they took over and shot up everything.
The miners.
And that's why he had to take over. So we see the crime without somebody in charge. They have free reign. So he approaches the head of the Pikes, and he says that, I'm here for the toll, because you have to pay to use it. And they're like, cool, no worries. There's a planet, Obadiah. We talked to our superiors in Obadiah. We're fine with it. We just don't want to pay two different people for protection.
Yeah, because they were already paying the Kintan Striders,
right?
Which is
they have a name now.
The Trandoshan gang, and you see, I think,
Well, not Trandoshan. No. Isn't this the speeder bike group?
No, not Trandoshan. The other guys.
Niktos. These are Niktos.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the gang that he stole the bikes from. The ones that tagged that homestead in the first episode that looked like Luke's house. And they say, yeah, we're fine with it, except we're only going to pay one. And Boba, okay, I will resolve this, he says. You will not, hear from them again. Those he called them Nikto Sandriders. You will not have to do this again. And so they seem fine with the toll. Now, whether they're stirring the pot a little bit and want him to go and fight these people, I don't know. But he saw what damage and power Boba has, especially with the primitive Tuskens, if that's how they perceive them to be.
Before we move on from this part, I want to point out and ask a question. While you're seeing the actual skulls, and not the skulls, the helmets, and then the camera pans away. In the back, you can actually see Pelimato in the background with his with pit droids following her. Yeah,
Are you kidding?
I watched this back like twice, and it is her with her frizzy haircut thing. And her pit droids, her 3 things were following her right behind it. It's great. Oh. But I also want to ask, what's on Tatooine for the Pikes? Because obviously they're very money and treasure driven through having like the spice mines. And so what are they doing? Like near the end of the episode, they show up with like a ton of other Pikes, like reinforcements. Are they just here to get into a war? Is there some hidden treasure somewhere? What are they here for?
Do you have an opinion, or do you just want to? You think I know?
No, you know everything. Just I don't know.
That's true, and I have that on tape now.
They could.
I think of it this way. Look at what we're learning about Tatooine. We haven't heard anything about mining yet, but we're learning that Mos Espa is a big place. Maybe there are, and this is just a small component of the planet in general. Um, and they are about spice. They are about moving their drugs and their products. This is straight up narcos, man. Pablo Escobar wants to get out of Colombia, get up into Mexico, wants to get up into America, Miami, but then wants New York and then LA. So I mean, I think expansion. I think for them, it's just moving their spice. Now the dudes at the end who show up look, and I keep forgetting they're fish people underneath. They walk out and it's like these people are here for trouble. So I think they've called in reinforcements. And as we see at the end, the last lines they're talking about, they're getting ready for war, and Boba's like, well, we'll be ready. So on Tatooine, maybe they see money in water, but we don't see them dealing with the watermonger because that would be a way to uh, harvest or mine the planet. But they're not talking about mining anything. It's just all we know about them is spice and import export, from the Clone Wars stuff.
And I don't. I think it is just the land or the water, or just owning the city, because we've heard that really well. Yeah, but like one of the Tatooine, we haven't really heard confirmation that there's really spice here, and we don't
No,
know that there's people growing it or however they get it, but it doesn't seem
this
like
is
the
their
greatest
supply,
place.
man. This is their supply route, and they want the outer rim because nobody is. It's an outlaw state. They control everything, and so they want the protection. Like, listen, we'll pay your toll because we know we're going to make, I don't know, bajillion credits over the long run. And so as long as they can keep that going, I think it's all about spice until we hear something different. We don't hear about slaves and, selling off trafficking or anything like that. So I don't think there's too much beyond just that. The mining, there's nothing.
Yeah, it's just yeah.
There's nothing. But good. No, great question. I think about stuff like that all the time. So boom, he meets with the pipe guy. Then in reverse, gets back on the bantha, and several shots of him walking slowly. Which, why didn't he take a speeder? He could have gotten there a lot quicker.
No idea.
Whatever. Plot point, plot hole. And then in the distance, he sees smoke. Take it away.
Smoke. Very
That's never
reminiscent
good,
of
right?
the prequels. Can't remember which one it is. Probably the second one.
When Anakin goes nuts on
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Uh,
hadn't seen a Tuscan camp
no,
devastated,
no, no.
except for Anakin. And Anakin's might have been more grotesque. Bodies cut in half,
Yeah.
and everything dead. These guys were systematically killed off.
Anyways, we see the sign of the Nikto gang, and they've come in and they've blown up and killed all of the big tribe, and you see one of the final shots in this flashback is he's standing over the chief's dead body and he's just laying
Mm.
there, and
The
then
chief that they had that real
yeah,
connection
yeah. And then
with
he looks
Fett.
over and he sees the gang sign that was on the homestead in the first episode, and suddenly he realizes, and now there's motivation and driving force behind wiping out the entire gang.
And but why did the gang kill these people now? Whose
Uh,
fault was it?
I mean, they did steal their speeders and kill their
Right?
guys,
They beat them
so
up. They stole their speeders.
made them feel bad.
Okay. Yep. Yep. And who knows? Maybe the Pikes paid a little money for, what I mean, to stir the pot a bit
Yeah.
to get because they know they're already paying money to those people, and I could see them pitting against each other. But I'm just curious. I mean, the Banthas, we saw these people were good fighters. This is their land. It's hard to imagine they'd be surprised. Maybe the Nikto gang, there's more than five. Maybe it's much bigger.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think
So it
it's more
overwhelmed
than
them.
five. Yeah, because we see that he killed all of the guys in the bar, which you
But I,
claim could be the Tashi station.
I
But
don't think he killed all of
I
them,
know, but
but
he
beat them.
he beat them. I don't think they'd
Yeah.
come back immediately. They'd probably go back to some bigger group.
I could be. Maybe there were other gangs and they absorbed them. Who knows? And but that was a sad moment because he had a he lived with them. He trained with them. One noticeable that we did not see was the black clothed one, who is maybe she's female, maybe she's not, but she's portrayed by that female stunt um, actor that we talked about in detail last episode. So she's not there. So hiding, did she escape? Was she not there at all? Because she's had so much screen time, they would have had to have zoomed in on her. They zoomed in on the chief.
I don't know. Maybe she got out.
Maybe she got out. Um, so he's in the middle of this, flashback, and we're like, oh my gosh. And it kind of answers some of our questions about stuff we were going to see in flashbacks. How long is he going to be with them? Because last episode, he got accepted. They
Yeah.
clothed him in the clothes that we see him the very first time in Mandalorian for a little bit. He's wearing the robes and the same, weapons.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay,
Obviously, he's not there long.
he's not there long. And then I'm like, okay, well, how much time's left? And maybe we're going to fast forward here a little bit. I don't know. But he's whipped into the present. His back to tank is thrown open. And this shocked me. I didn't expect to see this coming.
Jump scare.
Yeah, if not a scare for him. If you've ever been woken up or jerked awake, and open up and you see this, huge Wookiee, gladiator who assassin sent to kill you, it's going to freak you out a bit. And so that's where we saw Chrysanthemum show up. Talk a little bit about that.
He's just beating on him, throwing him around. He's flopping around in the back to the like this cyberpunk street gang guys show up and kind of circle him, close him in the middle of the room.
Boba's gonna die.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's beaten to death.
Crushed and beaten, and I think you hear bones or something snapping. Maybe he's just cracking his back for him. I don't know. But yeah, he's full-fledged fighting.
I don't really want to be too picky and like give a harsh review because this was a really good episode.
I agree, but I have a couple negatives
just
coming. So
for this fight, it felt unchoreographed. Like they were standing in the circle and it seemed like it was like a turn-based fighting game. One person went and then they kind of got hit back. The spinny yo-yo guy went. Then he got knocked back. And it was just back and forth. And
well, isn't that Boba at Tashi Station that last episode though? Any movie or TV, they just can't swarm him.
Yeah, but
this almost looked like they were trying to capture. They herded a bear together, in a circle, and they're trying to slowly.
Yeah, but
enslave.
I know you've told me that like
Maybe not.
Robert Rodriguez is this big action
Action
fight him guy,
fights.
but they would have been like multiple people beating on this big Wookiee and then emphasizing how big and strong he is instead of just one person,
Yeah.
another, until eventually has to
You
be
want to see
saved.
like
Yeah,
when Chewie.
yeah,
Chewie
everybody
goes nuts
going
on
at
him.
him, just
Yeah.
not this.
No, I totally get it. A cool thing about him, the knuckles. He has some brass
Oh,
knuckles.
yeah,
They
the
look
electric
spiked.
knuckles, yeah.
Well, and then he like has his hand open and he slowly closes them and then it zaps. I looked that up, and in the comics, he actually he's going to get Han Solo and he has to fight Chewbacca and he's beating up on Chewbacca and C-3PO's there kind of malfunctioning. He punches, and this is again from Wikipedia, summation of a comic. He punches C-3PO with the electric and causes a short circuit and kind of knocks himself out. A reverse execution. But this guy, I looked him up real quick and then we move on. He's performed by a guy named Carrie Jones, 6'7", massive guy. No real acting credits, but what's really interesting, he does special effects work in movies and makeup. He's been a supervisor, coordinator, or artist on Walking Dead, Watchmen, movies, Sin City, Robert Rodriguez, Django Unchained, Hateful Eight, Tarantino, Seven Psychopaths, Suicide Squad, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Just a ton of things, but he's a behind-the-scenes guy. And so that's really cool. He gets an opportunity to come out and be a really impactful character. and throwing around and fighting. Ultimately, so he fights the street gang off. Um, and then the Gamorreans show up and he tackles him down the stairs. I thought he was bolting, but he ends up in the throne room,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
where they kind of have another
Little
big fight.
quarrel.
Yeah, yeah. But he's also standing near the most famous trap door in cinematic history. Better than the Prestige. The Christopher Nolan movie.
Eh,
But I mean, well, no, I mean this is way more famous.
but that's
I
cooler
took the other
though.
one off the top of my head. Wait, you think the Prestige? The
They're
Prestige
cloning
is
people. That's a lot cooler.
spoilers. Oh my god.
That's like 10 years old. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this one's almost 40. So we drop him down into the Rancor pit, and they trapped him. And when I thought he could have ran away, but he had a job to do. He was there to assassinate, and so he's gonna fight. He didn't seem to be too lethal with some of them. It was just a full-fledged scrap.
Yeah.
Is ultimately what it was. Um, so once he's down in the Rancor pit, howling and everything, we jump to a table, a big spread of food where Boba gets upset, stop bringing food, but Finnick's just kicked back. What's the dialogue like with those guys? Because they're not really seeing eye to eye right now.
Yeah, it's different. They're not lined up. It's not, faithful daimyo and major domo anymore. She's all relaxed, like, you should chill, like, have some
Enjoy
food, just
this.
have fun. And then he's all super tense and like, I have to send a message. I have to prove I'm not weak. They don't
Right.
have this effect on me. I have to fight back.
Which is in line with what 88 said at the beginning, how the families, the three species, are waiting to see what he does, how powerful he is,
This leads into
things
one
like
of my
that.
predictions. We all
Oh,
think that she's gonna be all faithful advisor for the rest of the
oh, I
show,
see.
but I think this 8D8 guy is gonna, be this, the advisor because they see exactly the same things.
Yeah. So maybe they pair off together and try to take out Fett.
What? No.
Well, you're saying, I apologize. You're
I'm
saying
saying
that
Boba Fett
Fennec
and
doesn't.
8D8.
Oh, okay, I see. But the
Get
main
rid of
conversation
Fennec.
is that Fennec and he aren't always the
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
But you know what? As a right hand man, you don't necessarily want that. Gosh, what was I just saw a show that might have been a Sorkin thing. I don't know, but they talk about you always want to surround yourself with smart people, and if you are already the smartest person around, surround yourself with people that disagree with you. And that makes a lot of sense to me because it forces you to think different ways. It challenges you, and I think she's good for him in that he doesn't need a yes man,
Yeah.
and so I'm okay with what they're like. And if they were both acting the same, it might be boring, So as characters, I
Yeah,
kind of dig
yeah.
it.
I understand that. It's just he seems to be doing a lot more for the group than she has. Really, all she's done in 3 episodes is say no to this, no to that, throw a
Yeah,
knife at the
Chrysanthemum,
Chrysanthemum's thing, so he falls in,
Paul.
and that's kind of
Yeah,
it. Besides leaving one guy alive from the night
well, she
winds.
trapped that guy. I hear what you're saying, but she's definitely his right hand man slash bodyguard extraordinaire. But she's been around. Remember, the reason we know about her is because the Empire has a huge a bounty on her in the first Mandalorian season, right? Because she's a master assassin, so she's been around. She's been around. So then the twins show up, right? The twins show up outside, and they and right away, Boba, he's there, and they were like, "I'm apologizing."
We come bearing
Uh,
gifts.
because we tried to have you killed. We're sorry, and here's a gift. And the gift was really cool. It was a little Rancor.
Little baby Rancor. A
Now he didn't
calf.
name it yet, did he?
I think it had a name already. I just
I
don't
don't
remember
know.
it.
So young. I think I remember in the cave he says that I need to give him a name. So I thought maybe he did. The thing that I liked, and oh, you know what? This one didn't bother me as much, but it did take me out of the moment. It was the Wrangler, the caretaker of
Yep.
the Rancor was Danny Trejo, Machete, who is in all the Rodriguez movies. Okay, he's a tons of stuff. You might have seen him first either in Con Air or he's the Jaguar in the Pickle Rick episode.
No,
But
it was definitely Con Air.
Con Air would have been yeah, it's a good first one. So they're giving him the gift, and he's the Wrangler, so he is the new, the new Wrangler that we see from, in Jedi there was that fat guy who cries after the Rancor dies. His name is Malakili, and so and we'll talk more about Rancors in a bit. So, anyways, Danny Trejo, that was cool, but just like the Stephen Root character, it did pull me out. And this is the moment where I realized, I bet you Rodriguez directed this one as well. And then we saw
Yeah, yeah.
Chrysanthemum comes out, and Boba offers him back.
Looks really
And
sorry though for what he did. He's all like,
yeah,
droopy.
yeah, he knew that he was an assassin, but he sees the Hutts reject him and like, no, send him off to sell him. I think it was sell him off to the gladiator pits again. Where he must have come from, and based on his canon in those comics, yeah. And so nobody wanted him, and so the Hutts are like, listen, man, the Tatooine, the syndicates have promised it to the mayor, Mak Shaiz. So we're getting out of here. And I liked how one of them said that was it war is bad for business. And so
Yeah.
I think we're done with the Hutts, unless they try to come back after things get cleaned up a little bit.
I think they have some
Um,
sort of end game plan for this.
well, yeah, sure, but in the present,
Besides just
they're get,
leaving.
they're getting out of there. We'll let these people fight, and then we'll come and get the scraps later. So they leave, and then Boba lets Chrysanthemum go, and he says, "No hard feelings. It's just business." And the Wookiee doesn't run away yet, and he goes, "Let me give you some advice. Don't work for scug holes." Which I'm like, all right, that seemed a little weird. Haven't heard that one. He goes, "It's not worth it." And so Chrysanthemum takes off running. I so hope that Chrysanthemum comes back.
Oh, he's going
And
to.
I
100%.
hope, because he spared this dude's life. Okay. Not only did he not kill him, but he's not selling him off to gladiator pits, which he could probably die. Or the Hutt twins could have killed him. So I don't know how much you know about the Wookiees, especially in the expanded universe, but when you spare a Wookiee's life, they give you a life debt. And so I'm really hoping Chrysanthemum comes back. And now that we're knowing there's going to be some big battle, there's a Rancor. Boba says he wants to write it, and I'm thinking Chrysanthemum. I'm just picturing this big epic battle with all of these people coming together. One can hope.
Yeah.
Anyways, great. So then after the twins leave, and the Wookiee runs off, we go down to the Rancor cave for kind of a lengthy scene, which this definitely was recorded in the volume. And I didn't talk about this. As by the title of our podcast, we're Kevin Smith fans.
You.
And Kevin just interviewed the director of photography for these episodes in this series. Oh, I don't know his name. Can't remember. Sorry, guy. But they were talking about the volume, which we've talked about previously. That it used, it was like this circle, and they had LEDs on the ceiling and around them, and so they could, record any setting that they want that wasn't exteriors. And they've changed the volume to be now more of an oval, because the sound in a circle was really rough if they were standing in the middle. And I found this fascinating. Now it's 60 feet wide by 100 feet long. And so this particular scene, definitely, I would bet a lot of money, was in the volume, because it was so static in nature, not too much moving. But it looked like you were on set of Jedi.
His name is David Klein.
There we go, David Klein. David Klein, he got into movies with Kevin. He did Clerks, and he did a lot Mallrats, and he did a lot of the other Kevin Smith stuff before he branched off and did some big TV shows, Homeland on Showtime, and other things. But he definitely was thanking Kevin. I don't have a career without you, Kevin. And I just thought that was cool, and I meant to say that earlier, but I kept forgetting. So we're down there, and something that I just loved was just as these Disney Plus has allowed us to explore and create exposition for these Tuscans and learning more about them, they're not savages like Anakin said. Yes, it's a rough life out here, and yes, they kill and steal, but they have to survive, and they've humanized them, and they've humanized Rancors now. If you can humanize an animal or a beast, and they're not just crazy savages. Even though we saw the Malakali, had a bond with it. So in Jedi, so obviously he has a connection. This is the first time we're able to really explore Rancors in this new canon, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I just found that really, really interesting.
I really feel bad for the Rancors, like in this scene, because he talks about them being all like, he's depressed and they're emotionally complex creatures, and like breeding them for fighting, it's kind of like how dog fighting is,
Oh my gosh,
and
great pull.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, and those breeds that are historically the bruisers and the killers, in the dog fighting, but if you raise them right, they're loving creatures, right?
Yeah,
And they talked about here that they Danny Trejo, I don't even know if he has a name. He imprints the Rancors imprint on the first person they see, and I instantly thought about Avatar with those flying dragons, the banshees. Now this one, he doesn't have to plug something in, in order to connect, but you have to imprint and then instantly ride the banshees in Avatar. So I made that connection in my head. I don't know if you saw something similar,
yeah.
but emotionally complex, bred for fighting. But this guy saved this one because he wanted to raise him right, and I thought that was really sweet. And Boba loves the guy, the thing. I don't know, the girl or boy, but he goes over and pets it. Oh, is that the spot? Is that the spot?
Yeah.
8D8 comes in and he goes, "No, I'm busy." He wants to play with his pet, so he really likes it. Um, okay, kind of nerd out here. In the expanded universe, there's a
Oh,
lot of.
yes, I found something also.
Oh, go
In
ahead.
this scene, he talks about that there's rumors of the is it like night witches or
They
the
talk about the witches of
yeah, the
Dathomir.
witches of Dathomir riding the Rancors, and I'm like, that sounds familiar, even though like I've never really heard of that. And so I like went to researching, and I found it's from this one of the books, the Courtship of Princess Leia, which I thought was really interesting. I had to
Well,
dig deep
well, it's
for
not
that,
just it's not just from that because
but
I'm not
it
familiar
was
with that.
mentioned in that. I'm just
Okay,
saying that's what I
yeah.
found.
Good. Yeah, that was an occurrence. Famously, those Night Sisters, from the Clone Wars and stuff, and the other witches of Dathomir, they rode them in battle in a set of books called "The Legacy of the Force," where Luke is older and raising the kids, and they're fighting on Dathomir, like on top of mountains, and Rancors are trying to climb up mountains with sisters on them, and magic is being spewed, and lightsabers and hacking, and you see again, you don't see them being other than being domesticated for battle. They're still pretty forceful, just like we saw, in Jedi. But yeah, but this is kind of a spoiler for anybody reading the Darth Bane books. In the second and third book, he's out looking for
Spoiler.
Sith. Yeah, he's looking for Sith holocrons and looking for, because it's the rule of two. He doesn't have a bunch of people with him, and so he goes to these planets and he tames one and he controls it through the dark side and he rides it. So the Bane books, along with the Legacy of the Force books, are the ones that I know of. So I wasn't surprised when they were talking about riding them. And so visually, that I hope that should be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So 8D8. Anything else about Rancors?
Nope. Got
You can think
nothing.
of? Okay. And so he gets ready to leave because the mayor, 8D8 comes in and goes, the mayor can't meet for 20 days. He's always busy. He goes, okay, get Fennec, we're out of here. And he tells Danny Trejo, a machete, he goes, give him a side of Ronto, which I'm like, I know what that is. I know what it is, but I couldn't picture it. I just kept thinking of reeks or something, and that wasn't it. And so I looked it up, and it's
Yeah,
a
I did
giant
too.
brontosaurus type animal, which only shows up
Yep.
in
In the
A New Hope,
remastered.
in the remastered
Yep.
special editions where George put in some new CG, and it's happening in Mos Eisley. It has a Jawa hanging from its harness, suspended in the air. An air speeder has to turn because this giant brontosaurus type thing is, getting ready to stampede and lift up on its legs. But I'm like, of course, Aranto.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
looked into that also. There's a restaurant in Disney's Galaxy's Edge that also serves that.
oh, do they give Ronto burgers or
Yeah,
something?
something like that.
Fantastic,
I thought that was funny. I'm
fantastic.
like,
Very cool. So just moving along, the episode's almost done. So they go to see the mayor again. Major Domo, the clerk's there. He goes, okay, I'll go. Fennec threatens the dude's life, the Major Domo. So he goes, okay, let me see if I can rearrange something. And then the Major Domo goes into that room again and locks it. And so they have to go in and break into the door, which I thought this looks ridiculous because Fennec just stabs a knife into it and it pulls it down and rips wires and it opens. Every other door that we've seen in Star Wars, R2 or somebody has to put a spike in and digitally decrypt it, hack into it.
maybe
I
these are
thought
basic doors.
they can be. I was just like, oh, that seemed easy. I mean, she just ripped it out. It wasn't like crossing red wire with red and green with green. It was just whatever. It's a small thing, but I like the attention to detail. So they go in and find out that the dude bolted, and this was my scene that I didn't care for. And it's okay if you did. Everybody has their opinion, but it was the big chase scene throughout the streets, narrow streets. Um, can't get up to speed. It didn't seem like they were going fast, even though they're speeders versus their little. They look like mini mopeds, bright colored mopeds,
Yeah.
little Vespas. And even when they lean forward, they're like, "Oh, we're going fast." It
Like
just never really felt
little
like they were going.
buggies going.
Yeah. Um. I don't know. I I never felt like they're not going to get the guy,
Yeah.
and it just caused a lot of damage and little comedic here or there. I don't know. It was just out of the different cool scenes. I'm like, I was bored with it. What were your thoughts?
Um, yeah, seemed like a Fast and the Furious movie. Just,
Yeah.
just speeding around, and we all know that at the end they're gonna get the Major Domo, so
Yeah.
it's
Oh, the
just,
Major Domo. His speeder was like a luxury speeder, a lot wider and longer. It looked like it was, which if it's a mayor, it's like a stretched limo or something. But it's white and long. It reminded me of, and you might not have seen this, but the Dukes of Hazzard TV show, Boss Hogg, used to drive in this long white car, and this thing through those narrow streets seemed to be not the best idea.
yeah.
But if you're the mayor, you want everybody to see you, I guess. But we find out at the end the dude crashes. Oh, this was a cool Easter egg. Right when they stopped the car, he crashed into a big fruit stand.
Yeah.
Right? What's the Easter egg there?
I don't know.
The fruits. The fruits
Oh,
we saw.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He ends up like crashing into a wall, and then these berries fall on him, very Back to the Future style. And
Oh my gosh. What do you mean by that? You were right.
with the big truck of manure falling on Biff
Biff.
near the end.
That
But
is Yeah, perfect.
in Rebels animated TV show, they're
Hmm.
like sort of a running gag is that they need to go and get these berries, these Maloo berries.
They're melons, but yes, Milo runs. Oh,
Whatever.
I'm sorry. Am I not allowed to correct you?
No, you're not.
Okay. Well,
Anyways,
hmm.
anyways, uh, yeah, he crashes into them. They look very familiar. And we're like, we can't understand what it's called, and then we had to look it up. But yeah,
And we find out that the major domo says that the mayor's gone. He's working with the Pikes. And so we're like, okay, okay. So the lines are being divided. We knew that he was, and Fennec said that the mayor didn't really have power. 8D8 said that the mayor had his pockets lined, but he was never in charge. It was the three families, of the three different species. And so we cut to spaceport, which did Trandoshan? No, I'm trying to think who had the spaceport. Um, was it the Trandoshans?
Oh,
The spaceports, I think, would be a really huge, important um, component. Oh, Starport, the Klatooinians.
oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. Just import, export. You control who comes in, who lands. Permit. There just seems to be a lot of power there. But we see these massive ships, and we alluded to it earlier, where one lands, and then a bunch of the Pikes walk out, and we find out later it was about 12 Pikes show up, and that's the final talk at the end is Fennec and Boba are like, there's going to keep an eye on them. And he says that to Scad, who is the male, not Drash, but Skag, or Scad, rather. Keep an eye on them. Sorry, because the dude has one eye. And so little bits of humor. And I'm like, okay, because there should be humor in Star Wars. I mean, that is the main point of R2D2 and C3PO is the comedic humor throughout the early trilogy. And Han in the movie Solo, he's the one with the humor here and there. And so jokes are fine. And they've had a lot of that throughout, especially with him and Fennec, little one-liners. But they say there's going to be a war, and they said, well, we'll be ready. And then, boom, it cuts. And that leads us to what we were alluding to a bit ago about, he's going to have to talk to the three heads or however many people, but the three families. And probably, hey, if you guys want this way of life and I'm your, what's the term? It's not daimyo?
Daimyo, yep.
Daimyo, hey, I was close. That you need to, let's pull this together and I'll take charge. So I think that's where hopefully the next episode's going, and that should be really, really interesting. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Good. So that's the end of the episode. Did you have any other notes that you wanted to hit or talk about?
No, not really.
Okay, that's all right. I do. I think we talked a little bit about it, that the Black Tusken, or Black Clothed Tusken, we didn't see. So through flashbacks, I'm interested to see what's going to be with that. Because a lot of the things we talked about seeing in flashbacks, that's not going to happen because they're all dead now. And so thinking about more trips to the Bacta tank, finding out where that Tusken is, meeting up with that person, and then why isn't that person in the present?
Yeah.
So there's stuff that's got to happen because they clearly have a bond, as much as a fully clothed can't see each other type thing. There's something there, and again, it might not even be a woman; it could just be a man. But there's a warrior bond, and that person was there while he made his gap. He never left; always was right next to him. So that could be something interesting. Other flashbacks. When does he meet Fennec? At some point.
Yeah.
Is it the first time we see Fennec in that gunslinger episode, after she's been gunned down and we see 2 feet walk in, right? We don't know who that is. We're never confirmed that it's Boba Fett, but the next time we see Fennec in the next season of Mando, she's by his side. So we connect the dots. Is that the first time, do you think, that he meets her when he saves her, or do you think they already have a relationship?
They're both bounty hunters. They probably met through the system, but
they know of each other.
Yeah,
just like
I don't think they've actually met before.
Okay. They know of each other.
Yeah.
Would you say? Okay. Yeah, that's just curious to me because if they've already known each other or had a connection, relationship, working or otherwise, I'd like to see how that plays out. Does he save her in battle when she's caught, awake? I don't know. And then my last one, and I'm done with this episode. This was just something I thought of when I drive the other day. Why does Luke Skywalker have the last name Skywalker?
Because his family before him had the last name Skywalker.
Yeah, but his family before him didn't raise him. They're trying to hide him so no one ever finds him, right?
Yeah.
They give Leia to the Organa family, and her name is never Leia Skywalker. She's Leia Organa. Why isn't Luke Lars?
Why do you come up with this?
Well, why? I'm just curious because there's a Skywalker. I mean, it's not like a common name. If you're trying to hide him from the most deadly man, Darth Vader, why? I don't think you're gonna. And Obi-Wan, you're still there on planet, but yet give him a different name. He's being put into witness protection.
And you keep their name.
And you kept the name. How stupid.
I don't know.
Now,
Seems like it's oversight.
Luke Lars doesn't sound the best. But, if it's the Lars homestead and Owen and Beru are going to raise them, maybe they just didn't put in the adoption paperwork.
I feel like what should have happened is he goes by, like, Luke Lars or whatever. And then when he finally finds out whose father is, he's like, all of a sudden, he's all like, I have pride in my family's name.
That sounds awful familiar as to being Rey in Rise of Skywalker at the end when she all of a sudden classifies herself as Skywalker.
That's so stupid.
And that makes people, we roll our eyes at that one. But it's probably better that than if she decided, I'm going to go by Palpatine now.
That's fair.
But the Luke Lars, I just thought maybe Organa's, because he goes, we'll take the daughter, when on the Tantive when they separate, and he goes, we always wanted a daughter. We'll raise her as our own. And so maybe they adopted or said, hey, she is a birth. Maybe they acted like they had birthed her. So that's not, and plus she's royalty. And so she would have to have that name, Organa. But that's just one of the things I thought. I'm like, why isn't he Luke Lars? And I'm like, that would be so weird. So that's just my last contribution, and so I just wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. So.
Before we end this episode, I just want to ask: has Chris O'Dowd shown up in this episode?
Oh my God, is this going to be an ongoing? Okay.
You asked that last time, and I said yes. So.
Okay. Then what we need to do is have our Chris O'Dowd watch, have our own little music, our own little segment. And did he show up? Because I guarantee, listen, when he shows up, that's probably going to be leading the podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Forget the titling. It's just Chris O'Dowd has shown up.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Trejo was a big one for Robert Rodriguez. I don't think Chris O'Dowd is next on the list.
Yeah.
But, I'm just going by. They got minus the girl in IT crowd. They got the two male lead, supporting and male lead, but they got to get the other one. It's just closure, man. OCD, you just got to do it.
Yes.
And give him a voice, throw him into something. Who knows? Maybe he'll show up. Going to be a lot of speaking parts next episode around their long table.
That's true. We're going to have to look at IMDb.
Well, it won't be until after it can't get filled out beforehand for spoilers.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Yeah. So no Chris this time.
No Chris.
But when he does, we're gonna celebrate.
Chris watch.
Yeah, that'll be a good prediction. Good prediction. All right, so the streets of Mos Espa, not Isley. Our chat wrapped up. I hope everybody had a good time. This time flies for us. I hope that as you listen to it, driving in your car, wherever you're at, hopefully you find some enjoyment out of it. I enjoy talking about it, and I love hearing what Nolan has to say about it. So, thank you for listening. Any last thing, dude?
Nope. Thanks for watching our stuff, I guess.
Yep, or listening.
Or listening.
Or listening. But keep coming back, and we'll check you out next week for episode 4, which will have to be all of the families getting together.
Yes.
I hope it's a big talking episode, really. We learn so much when they just tell us what's going on. So that's good, so that we can play with everything. So, all right. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. This is Mallrats Podcast. I'm Bob.
Yeah, I'm Nolan. I'll
See ya.
See you next time.